各位听众您好，这里是 iGo News， 欢迎收听美国晚间新闻会诊，狐狸台观点。
Hello there, this is iGo News. Welcome to our U.S. Nightly News Summary from a Holy Channel perspective.
晚上好，感谢您的收看。
Good evening, and thank you for joining us.
今晚我们深入探讨最新的争议、关键议题以及在选举最后阶段中定调的激烈交锋。
Tonight, we dive into the latest controversies, key issues, and heated exchanges that are defining the final stretch of this election campaign.
随着候选人奋力争取选票，选战语调已变得锐利，双方指控不断。
As candidates push hard for votes, the tone has turned unmistakably sharp, with accusations flying on both sides.
贺锦丽和唐纳德·特朗普走上了截然不同的道路，各自将自己塑造成应对国家挑战的解决方案，从经济复苏到国家安全。
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are taking markedly different paths, each presenting themselves as the solution to the nation's challenges, from economic recovery to national security.
但随着民调收紧，竞选言辞加剧，显然这次选举更多的是关于美国未来方向的根本冲突，而非政策讨论。
But with polls tightening and campaign rhetoric intensifying, it's clear that this election is less about policy discussions and more about the fundamental clash over America's future direction.
贺锦丽如今已稳固为民主党提名人，着重强调品格，经常将特朗普描述为民主规范的威胁和分裂的煽动者。
Kamala Harris, now solidified as the Democratic nominee, has placed a strong emphasis on character, often framing Trump as a danger to democratic norms and an instigator of division.
他的竞选团队最近抓住特朗普关于前共和党人利兹·切尼的言论不放，切尼在外交政策立场上对特朗普持批评态度。
Her campaign recently seized upon Trump's remarks regarding former Republican Liz Cheney, a figure critical of Trump's foreign policy stance.
特朗普的评论集中于切尼的好战分子声誉，暗示他和其他干涉主义领导人一样，如果有前线作战经验，可能会有截然不同的看法。
Trump's comments focused on Cheney's reputation as a war hawk, suggesting that she, like other interventionist-minded leaders, would have a very different perspective if she had first-hand experience with the front lines of war.
贺锦丽及其团队迅速将此解读为不负责任的言辞，认为特朗普的措辞对公共安全构成风险。
Harris and her team quickly portrayed this as irresponsible rhetoric, suggesting Trump's language poses a risk to public safety.
特朗普的竞选团队则澄清称，这些言论意在批评切尼倡导军事干涉，并非字面上的暴力呼吁。
Trump's campaign, however, clarified that these statements were intended as critiques of Cheney's advocacy for military engagement, not literal calls for violence.
这一交锋反映出更广泛的竞选动态。
This exchange is emblematic of the larger dynamics at play.
贺锦丽将特朗普的竞选活动描述为混乱而失控，认为他的批评不适合总统身份。
Harris has characterized Trump's campaign as emblematic of an unhinged and chaotic approach, framing his criticisms as unfit for a president.
与此同时，特朗普指出贺锦丽对他言辞的关注是对迫切问题的分散，比如经济困境和外交政策。
Meanwhile, Trump has pointed to Harris's focus on his rhetoric as a distraction from the pressing issues, from economic distress to foreign policy.
在演讲中，特朗普将自己定位为美国利益的捍卫者，承诺恢复他所称的强大稳定经济，贬低贺锦丽的政策为灾难性社会主义。
In his speeches, Trump positions himself as the defender of American interests, promising a return to what he calls a strong and stable economy, and deriding Harris' approach as disastrous socialism.
随着经济问题主导公共话题，特朗普认为贺锦丽及当前政府使美国人境况更糟，凸显低就业率和通胀才是选民关心的真问题。
With economic issues dominating the public discourse, Trump argues that Harris and the current administration have left Americans worse off, highlighting low job numbers and inflation as the real concerns of voters.
经济却已成为本次竞选的关键议题。
The economy, indeed, has become a defining issue of this campaign.
最近的就业报告显示，新增非农岗位仅有12000个，是自2020年末以来的最低水平。
A recent jobs report showed only 12,000 new non-farm payroll positions added, marking the lowest level since late 2020.
经济分析人士指出，若劳动市场无限着改善，美国可能面临更深层的经济困境。
Economic analysts note that without significant improvements in the labor market, the U.S. could be on the brink of deeper economic difficulties.
至今，贺锦丽的竞选活动在解决这些经济问题的具体计划上声音不多，转而聚焦于社会公平和长期改革的广泛信息。
Harris's campaign has, to date, been less vocal on specific plans to address these economic concerns, instead focusing on a broader message of social equity and long-term reforms.
他的团队承认当前数据不尽如人意，但相信他的愿景将带来未来的更大繁荣。
Her team has acknowledged that while the current numbers are not as high as hoped, they believe her vision will lead to greater prosperity in the future.
另一方面，特朗普指出这些数据是他所称的拜登经济学失败的明确证据，批评贺锦丽的提案不切实际且方向错误。
Trump, on the other hand, has pointed to these figures as clear evidence of what he describes as the failures of Bidenomics, calling Harris's proposals impractical and misguided.
但对贺锦丽而言，他的策略是强调特朗普对国家团结和安全的危险影响。
But for Harris, the strategy has been to underscore what she views as Trump's dangerous influence on national unity and security.
他强调通过进步政策和社会改革重建美国的重点，将他的执政定位为必要的方向调整。
She emphasizes her focus on rebuilding America through progressive policies and social reforms, positioning her administration as a necessary course correction.
然而，批评者认为这一策略重在社会变革，而对立即的经济救助轻描淡写。
However, critics argue that this approach is heavy on social change and light on immediate economic relief.
许多特朗普的支持者呼应他的批评，认为县政府的经济表现是其任期内最薄弱的环节，通胀和生活成本影响着许多美国人的生活。
Many in Trump's base echo his criticisms, arguing that the current administration's economic performance has been one of the weakest points of its tenure, with inflation and living costs affecting the lives of many Americans.
特朗普的策略是利用这些经济痛点，将自己塑造成能够带回繁荣就业市场和稳定财务增长的候选人。
Trump's strategy has been to capitalize on these economic pain points, presenting himself as the candidate who can bring back a booming job market and steady financial growth.
同时，贺锦丽与拜登的联盟已成为一个争议点。
At the same time, Harris's alignment with President Biden has become a matter of contention.
尽管他对县政府保持忠诚，但有迹象显示他的竞选团队内部分人希望他与拜登拉开些许距离，考虑到拜登支持率下降。
Although she remains loyal to the current administration, there are indications that some within her campaign may wish for her to distance herself from Biden, given his declining popularity.
民调显示，随着经济忧虑上升，拜登的受欢迎度已下滑。一些民主党策略家认为，贺锦丽若稍加区分可能有利。
Polls show Biden's favorability ratings have dropped as economic concerns mount, and some Democratic strategists have voiced that Harris might do well to create some separation.
然而，这仍是一种微妙的平衡，因为拜登的支持在党内至关重要。
However, this remains a delicate balance, as Biden's endorsement is crucial within the party.
关于政府内部存在摩擦的传闻四起，一些人猜测奥巴马及其他高级民主党人可能会更积极介入，以弥合分歧，鼓舞民主党选民。
Rumors of friction within the administration have surfaced, with some speculating that Obama and other senior Democrats may take a more prominent role to bridge the gap and keep Democratic voters energized.
面对这些挑战，特朗普保持一致的信息，重申其熟悉的"美国优先"议程，承诺回归一个强大、 安全、自给自足的美国。
In response to these challenges, Trump has stayed on message, revisiting his familiar America First agenda, pledging a return to a strong, secure, and self-sufficient United States.
他的一个关键论点是反对无休止的战争，在这一点上，他与持鹰派外交政策的切尼等人形成鲜明对比。
One of his key arguments is against endless wars, a topic on which he sharply contrasts himself with figures like Liz Cheney, known for their hawkish views on foreign policy.
特朗普明确表示，他宁愿专注于国内改进，而非继续海外干涉。这一立场赢得了许多厌倦海外纠缠的选民的共鸣。
Trump has stated unequivocally that he would rather focus on domestic improvements than continue overseas engagements, a stance that resonates with many voters weary of foreign entanglements.
贺锦丽及其竞选团队抓住他的言辞，称之为一种鲁莽的信号，但特朗普的支持者认为这反映了实际且务实的国家安全方针。
Harris and her campaign have seized on his rhetoric, calling it a sign of recklessness. But Trump's supporters argue it represents a practical, no-nonsense approach to national security.
在两位候选人短兵相接之际，他们也在广泛依赖各自的支持者以强化信息。
As the candidates go head-to-head, they are also relying heavily on endorsements to bolster their messages.
贺锦丽获得了多位知名影星和有影响力人物的支持，显示了好莱坞及众多公众人物的认可。
Harris has brought several high-profile celebrities and influential figures on board, signaling the support of Hollywood and well-known public figures.
然而，批评者认为这些支持在2024年的影响力可能不如以往，因为选民似乎更关注切实的政策议题而非名人效应。
Yet, critics argue that these endorsements may have less of an impact in 2024 than in previous elections, as voters seem more focused on tangible policy issues than celebrity influence.
与此同时，特朗普也获得了意想不到的支持，包括商业领袖以及日益关注经济稳定和安全的选民群体。
Meanwhile, Trump has seen his own unexpected endorsements, including from business leaders and a growing base of voters concerned about economic stability and security.
这种分化凸显了美国人所期望的领导方式之争，是专注于广泛的社会变革，还是关注传统的经济增长与稳定？
This split highlights the ongoing debate about what kind of leadership Americans are looking for, a government focused on broad social transformation, or one centered on traditional economic growth and stability.
在宾夕法尼亚、亚利桑那和内华达等关键摇摆州的竞争已大幅拉近，最近民调显示这些关键的区几乎不相上下。
The dynamic in battleground states like Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Nevada has tightened considerably, with recent polls showing near dead heats in these key areas.
尤其是在宾夕法尼亚，拜登和贺锦丽已大力投入，是其未赢的选举的关键。
In Pennsylvania, particularly, Biden and Harris have made concerted efforts, viewing the state as critical to their path to victory.
特朗普的竞选团队也在此大力投资，时常凸显工薪阶层美国人的困境，承诺带回经济繁荣。
Trump's campaign has invested significantly here as well, often highlighting the struggles of working-class Americans and pledging a return to economic prosperity.
在演讲中，特朗普批评贺锦丽的经济政策为就业杀手，称他的政府将优先考虑进步的社会改革而非立即的经济救济。
In speeches, Trump has criticized Harris's economic policies as job killers, arguing that her administration would prioritize progressive social reforms over immediate economic relief.
贺锦丽则反驳称，特朗普的计划将有利于大公司和富人，而他的政策旨在构建一个更公平的社会。
Harris counters that Trump's plan would favor corporations and the wealthy, while her policies are aimed at building a fairer society.
尽管宾夕法尼亚的民调焦灼，拜登和贺锦丽也将重点放在新罕布什尔州，这个传统上的民主党堡垒如今被一些民调机构列为摇摆州，凸显选民中的不满情绪。
Despite the close numbers in Pennsylvania, Biden and Harris are also focusing on states like New Hampshire, which has emerged as a surprising battleground.
这一意外变化促使贺锦丽的竞选团队引入前总统比尔·克林顿。克林顿在吸引犹豫不决的选民方面曾证明了自己的有效性。
Traditionally a Democratic stronghold, New Hampshire is now classified as a toss-up by some pollsters, underscoring the level of discontent among voters.
与此同时，特朗普在中西部的支持依然坚固，他的经济增长和国家安全信息继续在蓝领工人中引发共鸣。
This unexpected shift has prompted the Harris campaign to bring in former President Bill Clinton, who has previously proven effective at connecting with undecided voters.
在外交政策上，两位候选人也有显着差异。
Trump, meanwhile, has maintained a stronghold of support in the Midwest, where his messages of economic growth and national security continue to resonate with blue-collar workers.
贺锦丽拥抱全球主义，致力于重建国际联盟，并承诺在全球范围内应对气候变化和社会正义问题。
On foreign policy, the two candidates also differ markedly.
而特朗普则进一步强化他的“美国优先”政策，承诺限制美国在外的参与，将资源转向国内优先事项。
Harris has embraced a globalist approach, seeking to reestablish international alliances and committing to tackling issues like climate change and social justice on a global scale.
这引起了认为美国不应承担全球负担的选民共鸣，尤其是在国内经济问题未解的情况下。
Trump, however, has doubled down on his America First policy, promising to limit U.S. involvement in foreign conflicts and redirect resources to domestic priorities.
贺锦丽将他的外交政策定位为一种全球责任，而特朗普则警告称他的立场将导致耗费美国资源的对外纠缠。
This resonates with voters who feel that the U.S. should not bear the burden of global issues, especially when economic challenges remain unresolved at home.
随着选举日临近，一个重要的问题浮现：选民会优先考虑稳定和经济增长，还是倾向于社会改革和进步政策？
Harris has framed her foreign policy as one of global responsibility, while Trump warns that her approach would lead to foreign entanglements that drain U.S. resources.
本次选举揭示了在回归传统价值观与推动变革之间的鲜明分歧。
As Election Day nears, one question looms large. Will voters prioritize stability and economic growth, or will they lean towards social reform and progressive policies?
民调依然焦灼，距离选举只剩几天，双方竞选团对阵不懈地争取味觉选民。
This election has revealed a stark divide between those who want a return to traditional values and those pushing for transformative change.
贺锦丽的竞选团队坚持他的政策代表了面向未来的愿景，而特朗普的团队则认为他的记录证明了其有效性。
The polls remain tight, and with just days left until the election, both campaigns are working tirelessly to sway undecided voters.
最终，选民将决定他们认为最适合美国的方向。
Harris's campaign insists that her policies represent a forward-looking vision, while Trump's team argues that his track record offers proof of his effectiveness.
在充满高风险议题的选举中，抉择或将归。
Ultimately, voters will decide which direction they believe is best for America.
结为一个问题：美国人是愿意押注于一个以变革为基的未来，还是回归一个熟悉的增长与稳定的公式？
In an election filled with high-stakes issues, the choice may come down to one question. Will Americans bet on a future built on change, or return to a familiar formula of growth and stability?
感谢您的收看，
Thank you for joining us.
我们将在选举最后阶段继续为您带来这场历史性选举的最新动态。
We'll continue to bring you updates on this historic election as we approach the final stretch.
以上新闻资讯整理自狐狸台，由 iGo News 编辑播报。感谢您的收听，期待与您空中再会。
The above news information is compiled from a Huli channel and presented by iGo News. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to your continued company on the air.